I think it's a shambles. I think it's a national disgrace. I think the whole system is in total collapse.
Well, I mean, you don't have to think that. It obviously is. It's absolutely apparent to all of us, whatever our perspectives, that the system has completely collapsed. The question is what can be and must be done about it now, urgently. And I think part of that question must be to address why it's collapsed, because if we don't understand why it is, and most importantly, if the Home Secretary won't face up to why it's collapsed, then I'm afraid it's going to continue in this way. And you actually, in your introduction, you highlighted perhaps the most revealing statistic as to why it's collapsed, and it was that figure that you gave, that only 4% of claims made in the whole of 2021 have by now been dealt with. And to understand why that has happened, you need to go back to the end of 2020, when there was a policy decision made to essentially put cases on hold, stop deciding them.
And this was under Priti Patel?
It was, but this Home Secretary has continued with this policy. It's actually worse because it's been put on the statute book. It's been passed into law. So we have a system that deliberately sets out to build backlogs. It doesn't matter whether the number of people arriving making new claims goes up or down. If you don't decide claims, you will build backlogs.
I couldn't agree more. I think that is absolutely the nub of the problem. What I don't understand is why the government isn't pulling its finger out. People are very, very angry on a humanitarian level. If you are truly an asylum seeker, then you must be looked after. I think we have a right and responsibility to do that. But clearly, one of the biggest problems and the thing that's getting people very exercised is the number of young Albanian men coming here, because, of course, Albania, not a war-torn country, a country waiting for EU accession. And, of course, you can legally travel with a visa to the United Kingdom.
Well, you can't legally travel with a visa to the United Kingdom unless you meet the rather restrictive rules that we have. Those rules, we should remind ourselves, don't allow anybody to come for the purpose of seeking asylum, and they are extremely restricted for other purposes. I mean, the type of work that you can get a visa for is extremely limited. So it's certainly true to say that there must be questions about how that is impacting on who is coming by these dangerous journeys. It's also fair to say that the number of Albanian claims decided over recent years is relatively low, although it is important to note that of the claims that have been decided, more than 50% of Albanians have been found to be entitled to asylum.
How can that be right? How can that be right when Albania is not a war-torn country? I just don't understand that.
Well, there are three reasons why some people who come from Albania have good asylum claims to make. They are, firstly, that the situation for lesbian and gay people in the country is extremely troubling and for many dangerous. It is also the case that for a number of people, there are issues around blood feuds, which are centuries-old matters in Albania, from which the government has consistently failed to be able to provide any meaningful protection. But the biggest issue in Albania is the number of people, the number of Albanians who are trafficked, whether women into the sex industry in this country and indeed elsewhere, or men into forced labour.
Steve, you were in mid-flow, and I thought it was really important we kept you on. You were just explaining how people are claiming asylum. We talked about being LGBT. You also, you had two further points. Just outline them again.
So I briefly mentioned the issue of blood feuds in Albania.
Indeed.
And then the most important issue is people trafficked out of that country for sex and labour exploitation.
Indeed. So just looking at the numbers now, we believe that actually Albanian men make up a huge percentage, if not 60% of the recent arrivals. Now, we've got over 12,000 Albanians now in the United Kingdom. I want to bring Emma Wolfe in, if I may. Emma, you said something to me in the break, and maybe you could ask Steve.
I mean, I don't want to sound unsympathetic, and I get the situation in Albania. I've been to that country. It's not a pleasant place to be. Why is any of this our problem? Why is the trafficking? Why is, I mean, presumably you can claim to be gay and come to this country and claim asylum. Is that correct?
Even if you're not, is what you mean?
You can just claim to be a lesbian, perhaps. Is that the case?
Steve?
Well, you can make a claim, yes, and your claim will have to be determined. It'll have to be assessed.
How do you determine if someone is LGBT?
Well, you will interview them probably more than once, probably with quite a degree of intrusiveness in the questioning, and you will make an assessment of what they say, what they tell of their history, what they explain of their past, check what you can from any records that can be obtained, and assess whether their claim is well-founded. That's what happens whatever somebody claims.
So the government have relationship, sexual, I mean, they have experts doing this kind of thing. I think these are a couple of really, really astonishing revelations about how you can come here from Albania. I mean, the public are really angry about this. We have a cost of living crisis here ourselves. We are shouldering a very, very, troubled country. We are inheriting a situation which Albania needs to be addressing.
Isn't that the point, though, Steve, that this is Albania's problem, not ours?
Well, I'll say two things, if I may. Firstly, in terms of the suggestion this is Albania's problem. I mean, the starting point in relation to any refugee is that, yes, it is the responsibility of the country that people flee from to protect them and treat them humanely. But the Refugee Convention obliges all other nations where countries refuse to treat their people with the basic human respect of respecting their lives and rights, human rights, that is, then they are entitled to asylum. As for the question of lesbian and gay people seeking asylum, whether from Albania or anywhere else, I'm really not sure what the point is to try and be made. Are we saying that, we're not going to provide protection to lesbian and gay people who are persecuted around the world simply because we're concerned that people may say they are lesbian and gay but not be? I think that's a very dangerous and terrible attitude, to be honest.
I mean, my feeling on this is the EU loves poking its nose into matters that doesn't normally concern it. I don't understand if Albania is waiting for EU accession, why the EU hasn't stamped down on this and told Albania to get its situation in order.
Well, I think one thing that would be dramatically better if the EU is to approve Albania's membership is it will make a dramatic difference to the capacity of that government, because of the economics that will change, to be able to provide the sort of protection that for many, many years it has not been able to provide its people.
Steve, I think, look, I hugely respect the work that Amnesty does around the world and, for political prisoners and all of that. But I think when you are talking about a country like Albania and you are telling us that blood feuds and trafficking is perhaps a different point, but being a lesbian or being gay could actually, gives you permission to come to this country and claim asylum, I think people are going to be, I think they're going to be quite shocked by that.
If I may just say, Steve, we know that we've got a major problem here. We know that 14 councils say Kent is at breaking point. There is no provision for health, social care. We've seen the terrible, terrible circumstances people are being kept under at Manston. That clearly needs to stop. But many people, and I'm just going to read you a couple of these messages, which I think this is on point. I have an idea. Our government likes to outsource. Let's outsource our border force control to Australia. They can manage their borders rather well. Isn't the problem that actually we've been weak and pathetic? We need to turn the boats back, have a zero tolerance approach.
The short answer to that is no. Turn the boats back to where?
To France.
Well, France is not going to accept the boats.
Well, neither is the UK under this.
So we'll just let people drown in the Channel then?
Well, they shouldn't be crossing the Channel in the first place. It is a very dangerous piece of water, and also they can claim asylum in France. They can claim asylum in many other European countries.
I'm sorry to say that the people who cross the Channel, many of them have been unable to claim asylum in France.
And why is that?
Probably
why is that?
Probably because the French system has for many years been receiving many, many more people than do we into its asylum system. The number of people, even now that we see seeking asylum on our shores, remains relatively small compared to nearly all of our European neighbours. It's time, frankly, that we made our asylum system work rather than constantly blaming others for the responsibilities that we still keep shirking. And frankly, it comes back to the point we started with. If only the government would process the asylum claims it receives, we would not have to be in the mess that we are now in.
I don't disagree with you. I actually agree that I think it's about the processing, and I think they need to make a quick and firm decision. If you are a refugee, then great, and obviously you need to be looked after. If you are not, you need to be removed from this country, and it needs to be done within a 24 or 48-hour time period. Emma, your thoughts?
Well, no, but I think that I fundamentally disagree with Steve's premise, which is that these people should be given asylum, that they have a legal claim based on those kind of criteria. And I'm afraid that's where the public are saying, no, actually, we won't accept people. We cannot give asylum, which is what we're talking about. We cannot give asylum to people who are coming here from places like Albania, who, as you say, it's not a war-torn country. It's a very, very problematic country, but it is not our problem.
Well, and Steve, I mean, just in terms of where we are, I can see from the messages here, people are very, very angry indeed. They're very cross that about £7 million is being spent every day.
Every day?
Every day.
On accommodation?
Yeah. £7 million. So people are very angry about it. Isn't the point the government is there to serve the people? If the people don't want this to continue, surely there needs to be legislative change so that actually we decide what is right for this country. And if we don't want to accept people into this country, then that is at the will and bequest of the people.
Well, I have, again, 2 points to make about that. Firstly, our country, as pretty much all countries around the world, is legally obliged to provide asylum, actually under an agreement.
Under 1951 agreement, yes.
Instrumental in providing for the world. But the second point is this.
But you don't think, so hang on a minute, you don't think people are taking advantage of the system at all?
I am not saying, and I've not said in this interview, I've never said
I'm just checking.
There is nobody who, if they make an asylum claim, isn't entitled to it and should not be removed once that has been properly found. So coming to my second point, if I may.
Indeed.
If we as a nation decide, and to some extent we already are, we're trying to do this, that we will not share in the responsibilities that we have with others, it doesn't make this issue go away. It doesn't stop people making these journeys. What it will eventually do is mean more people not finding safety elsewhere because we won't meet our obligations, so other countries are even less inclined to meet theirs, and more people hiding from our system, going to ground, which I'm afraid to say in the long run will be even more disastrous.
But Steve, we also know
taking the responsibilities we receive.
Well, let's be clear about the Albanian problem. We know that actually many of these Albanians are coming here to disappear into the black market, to become part of the drug crime problems. We know that of those 12,000 Albanians, 5,000 have claimed they're victims of modern slavery. I just don't buy it.
I'm sorry, we don't know any of those things, but what we do know is if our system makes itself so menacing or so incompetent and awful, then yes, it is very likely that more people, whether they're Albanian or of any other nationality, will disappear and they will be exploited here. And no doubt they will be lured into doing things by other people who wish to exploit them in order to try and continue their existence. That isn't good for them, and it's not good for us.
So, Steve, let me ask you this. There is a political dilemma here. I said yesterday that if the Conservative Party doesn't sort this out and quickly, they'll be out of power and for a very long time. I'm not sure Labour has any policies either on that. Would you agree that this is a political priority to sort out this mess?
It must be a political priority, not least from my perspective, because thousands of people are being horribly mistreated at this moment in time, which is certainly a very poor reflection on our government.
Steve, thank you
I agree with you.
Thank you very much indeed.